precursor that in the previous one working with the decimal. It's also, we're going to go through and do the same concept doing fractions. So here, when I'm looking at this, understanding how to read this negative, the square root of 9/16, they are only wanting the negative answer. They're not wanting both of them. If they want both, they will give us the plus and minus symbol on the outside, or they will ask in words. So let's review really quick, which we only did one of these in our activity yesterday, how to solve the square root of 9/16. You can either look at it as the square root of 9/16, or for some of you, it might be easier for you to think of it like this, okay? And think of it as a perfect square over a perfect square versus a fraction, right? So if I were to solve the square root of 9, well, that would be 3 times 3 is 9. And the square root of 16, well, 4 times 4 is 16. So I know that my answer is going to be 3/4. Now I'm just going to go ahead and apply a negative sign on my answer because that's what they asked for here. So this would be my final answer. The negative square root of 9/16 is negative 3/4. Okay, we apply that on the outside. Why would they ever do this? Probably because eventually they're going to be doing where they put a number in front of this and then they're asking you to do that next step and solve. So then I would look at that as 4 minus 3/4 to then continue my orders of operation. Okay, so let's practice a few of those where we're working with the fractions. Okay, so this time they want the positive and the negative. So in our final answer, we're going to have a plus and a minus sign. So think of it like this. What's the square root of 1? Well, square root of 1 is 1. And then the square root of 9/61. And you may use your calculator if you would like to on that. Square root of 9/61, let's see. 9/61 gives me 31. Okay, so I end up with a final answer of the positive and the negative of 1 over 31. Okay, eventually, as you get into more advanced problems, they may do that and ask you to find both answers. So then they might throw a number out here. And so they're going to ask you to find two different answers. So 4 plus 1 and over 31 would give me 4 and 1/31. And then 4 minus 1 and over 31 would give me 3 and 30 over 31. Okay, so that's just something that's a little more advanced right now. We're just going to focus on doing this part of it right here. Okay, eventually they will add that next step to us. Okay, I want you guys to try this one independently. So you've got the positive and negative square root of 4/25. So remember, you can break that down into the square root of 4 over the square root of 25. Go ahead, pause your video and work through this one. You should have gotten a positive and a negative of 2/5. Okay, so that's working with those, those square roots of rational numbers. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same concept, only this time we're going to be working with decimal numbers. Okay, so here the square root of 2.25. Now, if you would like to use your calculator to do this, you may do that. You can go ahead and use your calculator if you have your square root button, just because right now I'm having you practice this concept right now. Okay, so 2.25, the square root of that would be 1.5, so plus and minus 1.5. This would be my final answer. Remembering, if it asks for the positive and the negative, I have to include those in my final answer. Okay, so this time they're asking for the positive and negative of the square root of 4.84. Okay, so I've got the positive and the negative, and now the square root of 4.84 gives me 2.2. This is my final answer. Okay, remembering, understanding how to use that calculator. Okay, if you've got your square root button, it depends on the calculator. Sometimes you push that first and then the digits, and sometimes you do the digits first and then the square root button. You have to remember from yesterday how your calculator works. Okay, I need the negative square root of 1. Okay, remember, anytime you have 1 underneath, 1 times 1 still gives you 1. So your answer here is going to be a 1. And this time they were only asking for the negative of that. So my answer is going to be a negative 1. Okay, remember, eventually they'll be putting a number maybe out in front of this. And they might say 4 minus the square root of 1. You would solve your square root of 1, which is 1. And then you would do 4 minus 1. Okay. So our final answer there was just a negative 1. All right, I want you to try this one. If they don't ask for anything out here, then that means you're going to go ahead and just give your positive answer. Okay, so if they don't ask for anything or they don't put in words that they want both of them, they leave it blank, then you're going to go ahead and give your positive answer to that. So go ahead, pause your video and work through this one. You should have gotten 3.5 as the square root of 12.25. Okay, so that's working with just square roots, some rational numbers, which are fractions, and then also our decimals. And yes, you can use your calculator to help. Remember when you're working through the fractions though, to just remember you're working, for the most part, you'll be working perfect squares there. I know like on this one that I just pulled out, 961 isn't a perfect number that I have memorized, so I might use my calculator to help with that one. But if I had a smaller number like I had here, I know the square root of a 9. I should know that one. That's a basic multiplication fact, 3 times 3. Okay, so remember when you're working square roots, you're finding what number times itself is going to give you that number that's underneath the square root symbol. Okay, so evaluate.